Okay, now here is and there's a lot of speculation that you don't make a deal with Flynn unless you have somebody higher up on the food chain, and people immediately assume that that is Donald Trump. There is
There's
also
some intermediaries there potentially. There's Kushner. There's
well,
Don
I
Jr.
think this has to do. At the very least, there's reason to believe that Kushner is highly. This is highly precarious for Kushner. So Dan Frumkin pointed this out on Twitter, and then he made a little bit of a note on the Times piece that talked about Flynn's plea. There was a UN vote that Flynn was trying to get Russia to delay. And this is based on their efforts, Trump's effort as president-elect, to defeat the UN Security Council resolution that reaffirmed international law, the international law's prohibition against the Israeli settlements in the West Bank that were illegal. And apparently, Kushner, I mean, Frumkin's theory, anyways, is that Kushner was behind this. Mueller's investigators, this is from the New York Times, have learned through witness and documents that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel asked the Trump transition team to lobby other countries to help Israel, according to people briefed on the inquiry. Investigators have learned that Mr. Flynn and Mr. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, took the lead in these efforts. Mr. Mueller's team has emails that show Mr. Flynn saying he would work to kill the vote, the people briefed on the matter said. So, and this then involves Flynn lying about what he talked to Kislyak about. So, there's not necessarily evidence here that that there's collusion in terms of the election. As far as I can see, right here, there is some evidence that they colluded with the Russians to undercut the sitting president of the United States.
That's correct.
In foreign policy. That is also not legal.
Right.
So
and again, like, we need to go further. I listened to the Ross thing, and he said that I didn't, and I've seen it in writing differently. So, but when you listen to that, maybe I missed it, and unless I missed it, it's that he was instructed by Donald Trump. Ross actually said candidate Donald Trump,
right,
to reach out to the Russians. So if he was instructed by candidate Donald Trump, you also have broken federal election law. So there's that too. That's an illegal campaign contribution. They're not allowed to advise, offer, do anything. So again, now you're talking about multiple federal laws, and then magically, who's the one that Donald Trump tells Comey to back off of the investigation into? That's Flynn.
Well, that's also because he was a good guy.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that was it. And then he fires him. Comey, that is.
Right.
Although he did fire Flynn, too. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but there is a point where, yes, I'm not a lawyer sitting in a court right now, but I'm a human being with, as far as I know, with a working sort of cerebral cortex. I mean, this stuff is all, it's not a shock when you see enough things that are related like this. It all comes out that, in fact, one was done for the other. And in all these meetings, and then when you look at the Flynn call after the election, which was about these sanctions, and then you start looking at, this story just came out. I mean, it came out earlier, but I guess it came out that, on Eric Prince's meeting in the Seychelles, because he was an interview there with one of Putin's top guys, who's a big Russian oligarch. It's the same as the meetings that were in Trump Tower, where they were supposedly talking about adoption. Oops, no, they were talking about sanctions. These meetings that Eric Prince had, they were talking about sanctions. The call that Flynn made, they were talking about sanctions. There starts to be a little bit of a pattern here after a while, doesn't it?
Is it sanctions?
It could be sanctions. Clearly, there's a lot of very rich Russian oligarchs, including Putin himself, that are being hurt financially by these sanctions. And they don't just make these calls and have these meetings or whatever and say, we'd like you to help us out. And Donald Trump, because he's a kind guy, says, sure, yeah, I'll help you out. I mean, we don't know what the quid on the other side of the pro quo is yet.
Right.
But we can be pretty suspicious what it is. So, I mean, again, you do have to see this in light of all that context and everything else we know. Felix Seder, the mobster who worked alongside Trump and then was working for that Bayrock group that apparently was a big money laundering operation for the Russians to put money in real estate in the United States. And he was saying, I'll put you in touch with the Russians and, if you do some of these things for them. I mean, I'm sorry, there's a lot here. A lot of it involves sanctions, and, we're just getting closer.
There was a statement put out by Ty Cobb, the White House lawyer.
How he abuses that name.
Today, Michael Flynn, a former national security advisor at the White House for 25 days. In other words, he's practically just the guy who gets the coffee, in other words, like Papadopoulos.
He was there for 2.5 Scaramucci's.
Exactly. During the Trump administration, and a former Obama administration official.
I love that.
Yes.
That's what they put out there.
Reminder, Obama specifically warned Trump about Michael Flynn, which suggests that there may have been a lot of questions about what Flynn was up to when he was an Obama administration official, frankly.
And here's the other thing that was weird under Obama, if I'm correct. He either was pushed out and resigned or was fired.
Yes.
So that doesn't usually imply that you liked what he did.
Entered a guilty plea to a single count of making a false statement to the FBI. The false statement involved mirror the false statements to White House officials, which resulted in his resignation in February of this year. Recall, the White House knew for at least 2 weeks that the Department of Justice felt that there was stuff that Flynn had done that was a major security risk. And they did nothing about it, and ostensibly fired Flynn because he lied to Mike Pence. Subsequent reporting suggested that he didn't lie to Mike Pence. So the Ty Cobb here,
Pence gets pulled into all of this too.
Well, maybe or maybe not.
Bonus.
But the idea that he was his resignation resulted from false statements to the White House is in and of itself a false statement. Nothing about the guilty plea, the statement goes on to say, or the charges implicate anyone other than Mr. Flynn. In a very specific sense, that is correct. Michael Flynn's guilty plea and nor the charge implicates anyone else. It is Mr. Flynn's testimony that will probably implicate somebody else. The conclusion of this phase of the special counsel works demonstrates again the special counsel is moving with all deliberate speed and clears the way for a prompt and reasonable conclusion. In other words, we're glad that's over. We got Flynn. Let's go to bed. Let's roll this thing up. And I don't think that's going to.
Well, he may be trying to manage his client's emotion.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos